Christian Banach is back in the house all the way from Chicago, man. Welcome back to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
I have been great. Thank you for having me back. Hard to believe it's been almost a couple of years now, but really excited to chat again and talk about some of the new things that we've discovered over the last couple of years.
Yeah, had you on episode 593. So the interview was in November, published it in December, 12/1/2022.
Wow.
And you're still alive and well. So you must be doing something right, huh?
I'd like to think so. Yeah, I'd like to think so.
So your website, we're going to get into some direct outreach, right? But your site is how to build awareness and win clients with email newsletters. I'm sorry, I pulled that off of your LinkedIn, so that was prominent. And I've had a few cold outreach folks on the podcast in the last year. I'm a little torn on it. I know it works for some, others don't like it, but you got a little twist on this.
We do, yeah. So when we launched the business about 3.5 years ago, we were strictly cold email, cold calling organization, outsourcing, primarily working with advertising and marketing agencies, consulting firms to help them generate leads at large enterprise organizations. And as we've seen year over year.
So what does that mean? I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's what I do. Okay. So was it purely like B2B? Was this like, Oracle trying to reach, big corporations to switch, or was it business to consumer? Was it small business?
Yeah, great question. It was all B2B. So, you're a small agency or a medium-sized agency, and you want to, win an automotive company. You could come to us, and we would, reach out to the Fords and the GMs and the Cadillacs and all of those of the world, and we would be scheduling appointments between whomever that decision maker is at that company and our client.
And were you doing cold calling and email and direct mail, or what was that cadence like?
Yeah, so when we first started, it was cold calling and cold email. And then what we've discovered, over the last couple of years is that the phone has actually become much more challenging in the enterprise space, where I believe it's probably a symptom of a couple different things. I think it's people that have gone remote, so reaching them at an office has become more and more challenging. And then we've also experienced, and I'm sure we all see this on our phones, where it'll say spam likely, or if you don't know the number, it'll send them right to a voicemail. So there's been some advances in technology. So we've actually pulled away from, in most cases, cold calling and have focused more on email, just seeing a better ROI, through that channel versus calling. And I know there's some industries where that's not necessarily the case, but with most of our clients, that's what we're seeing. So right now, today, it's primarily cold email.
Interesting. Yeah, because like I said, I've had a few folks talk to. I worked with a client end of last year, early this year. They had already incorporated it and failed with one company. They had brought on another. They bring me in just to help overall with sales and marketing and training the salespeople and do a little executive coaching, a little bit of everything, and asked me to kind of oversee the cold email outreach. And I was like, I'm not a fan, but it's here. I'll do what I can. Didn't work. But I mean, I'm by no means an expert. They had two separate, and I forget the names. One was Apollo and another big one, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but I mean, two prominent platforms. But it was a tough, I mean, they were like an IT support. I mean, it was a very competitive, really kind of stale industry, and the company was in a little bit of chaos and doing some downsizing. But I mean, that's my experience with it.
Sure.
It was not pleasant.
Sure.
So I'm like, am I just a bad guy? Or it's just, you got to really specialize to make this work.
Yeah. No, I think it can be a number of different things. There's certainly some industries, some types of companies that certain channels work better than others, than the company themselves. If you're just really a generalist with nothing really interesting to say, I'm not sure there's any channel that's going to work.
Yeah.
Is it you? Is it a business problem within the organization, or is it
Yeah.
the channel that you're reaching out to? So there's that, and then the game has changed. It continues to evolve, and working with a group like us, I mean, we are blessed in the sense that we work with across dozens of different clients, so we see what's working, what's not working across them, and are constantly iterating the process, the tools, the technology, the messaging, the offers, all of that that constantly needs tweaking, and to stay on the cutting edge, and continue to get results for your clients.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on the extreme end of the B2B space. I mean, I'm a micro business, right? So I get most of the cold email I get are from people pitching guests to be on my podcast, and they're so bad, right? I've got a dash in my name on LinkedIn, so they scrape it, and LinkedIn, I don't know if they're selling it or if it's getting scraped or both, but I get all these emails, hi Wes Dash, and then they'll pull something from a recent podcast. It was so great. I'm so looking forward to learning about how to build awareness and win clients with email newsletters with Christian Banach. I'm really looking forward to that. By the way, are you accepting guests? It's so bad. So again, I know I'm on these are small businesses, targeting small businesses.
Sure.
I'm doing a terrible job. Although, and it, actually, some of their guests are very good. I'm like, okay, I'll take them. So there is a success rate there, but it's almost despite themselves.
Right.
You know, are you seeing, like you mentioned Ford? I mean, in bigger businesses. So is it more concise, or is it more direct? Like, hey, you're a big business. Here's somebody. Do you want to talk? Like, are you hitting them often? Like what's that cadence like?
Sure. I mean, a lot goes into it. I think, one of the things is, it's not the frequency necessarily. We're not necessarily, when we're doing a cold email per se, it's not about bombarding them with, more and more emails. If they haven't responded to the first couple, there's probably a reason why. One of the big keys is what you said. There's a lack of attention to detail that a lot of sellers are doing, or even some of our competitors are doing, the lower cost ones, is sort of get what you pay for. Your example of the LinkedIn, yeah, that's what all of these companies are doing, is scraping the data, and we scrape the data. However, you have to have a human that's going to go through and review all of these, all the names, and we clean these things up, and we clean up the company names, and your messaging. You don't want to sound like you're saying, oh, this is the greatest podcast of all time, and you gotta have some more common sense. With
I mean, they're not wrong in my case, but I know what you mean.
exactly. Everybody else's, of course, yes. But when you're talking a lot with the bigger companies, especially, we always believe in, you have to provide value to them, and you can't just ask, hey, Ford, we want to get 15 minutes on a call and tell you how amazing our agency or consultancy happens to be. There's no value in it for the prospect. They're inundated. You're inundated, Wes, as a small business. Imagine what the chief marketing officer of Ford, what their inbox looks like. I can't even imagine what it looks like. So you really have to think through strategically, like, what is the problem that this individual is likely experiencing? And then, do you have something unique and different that will dramatically increase, that then solve that problem for them? And if the answer is no, then you probably don't have a right to even be reaching out to them in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's where I get back to sometimes the business strategy. Like, if you don't have something unique and different, the likelihood of them responding to a cold email is very slim. And then, thinking through, what can we do? Like, we were advising clients on, do you have some unique insights that you can share? Do you have trends? Do you have other sorts of resources that could potentially help them? And you may need to give some of that away for free, just as a way to start to build a relationship with that individual. So that's a lot of like the strategy behind the cold email. It's not just downloading a list from Apollo and blasting out emails. Anybody can do that, and a lot of people are, and it's flooding people's inboxes. But there's much more to it if you're going to do it at a high level and see success.
So these higher level folks, a CMO at a Fortune 1000, Fortune 10,000, they have a Fortune 10,000. I don't know. They have a Fortune 5,000, right?
They do.
Um, you know, are they sitting at their computer checking email? Don't they have like executive assistants kind of screening things for them, or maybe they have like a public facing email, but then kind of friends and family and key staff internal email. Like what do you see in there?
Yeah, I think it depends on the seniority level. If you're talking C-suite, I think a lot of these bigger companies, yes, their executive assistants probably in their inbox, kind of monitoring as well. But you know, if you're leading with something of value and you've really struck a problem that that business is experiencing, it is part of the responsibility of the executive assistant to bring, and flag those types of messages. But we're talking, more on the VP level or below. Odds are they don't have an executive assistant that's sifting through all of their emails for them.
Yeah.
So it's not easy. I mean, if it was easy, then everybody would be doing. Everybody was seeing success, and that's really where the devil's in the details with this. So,
Yeah. Um, I had a guy on I've become friends with, John Buchan. He has the charm offensive, and he sends drunk emails. I mean, his story was he was a struggling marketer. He's out in the UK, uh, and was having a rough go, got drunk, and fired off some emails to big companies like McAfee. I mean, not little companies. And he was like, "Oh, what the hell did I do?" Right? And next thing he knows, they're replying, booking meetings, and he's making sales. So he's totally irreverent. He'll include GIFs and funny pictures and has done well, so from like super formal to a little more casual to sending, dancing ferrets in bow ties, like where do you find success?
yeah, I think he's onto something. Is that most emails, without even opening them, you could tell right away it's an automatic sales email of some sort, and that's what you want to avoid. So whether that is the length of the email, whether that's dancing ferrets that you have there, the message itself, like offering some sort of value, you need to stand out. You need to, where we come in, most of our clients are very sensitive. They're, the ferret thing probably wouldn't work for our clients. But we really believe in personalization. So it is truly taking the time to research the company, research the individual, and write something personalized to them that is relevant to what you're offering. So you don't want to just say, "Hey, I saw you went to XYZ school. Go Panthers!" Right? There's nothing. People can see right through that. AI can do those types of things as well these days. So you really need to do some homework, and it's not about volume necessarily, getting as many emails out as possible. You do want to get volume, but you have to keep that quality at the same time. And so where we try to stand out and advise our clients on is that personalization. And if your company and the brand is a little bit more playful, yeah, I think some other things like what you just described of this individual, I think those things could work.
Yeah. So why would a company with a sales team, why would they outsource this to you? I mean, isn't this a salesperson's job to prospect and set meetings?
Well, we work with companies, I think, in a couple different capacities. In some cases, a lot of the agencies or consulting firms, they don't really have sales teams. It's really a founder-led sales type approach. They've been growing more through inbound referrals, their networks, that sort of thing. Then they, at some point, realize that waiting for the phone to ring is not a growth strategy, and they hit a wall and they need some help. So they have a decision to make. Do we go out and hire a sales team, or do we, outsource it to a firm, like ourselves? So that's, I would say, most of the clients that come to us are in that situation. They're new to sort of the sales part of the business. But we do have clients that come to us and they do have, a sales team or some capacity, and they may need extra horsepower. That their salespeople, maybe their time is better spent to nurture those relationships, pitch, close, that type of work versus pounding the phones, which, it's tedious and it's time consuming, and may not be the best use and budget for your high price sales team, when you can outsource it for much less. And beyond that, a lot of the more senior level sellers, they don't want to do that type of work. They've already sort of advanced in their career to a point where, they don't want to do the cold calling, cold emailing part of it. So I think there's a spectrum, of reasons why someone would come, to a firm like ours. What is great about us as well is, can get up to speed incredibly quickly. We have the tools in place, we have the team in place, we have everything ready to roll, versus if you go out and you need to hire someone, you're, spending maybe months even just recruiting that individual, that you need to train that individual. So that process can take, a lot longer, versus, outsourcing, which again, the right firm, you can be up in market much quicker.
Yeah. I mean, how do you know if you can help someone? Like, what if like the client I had, I mean, there were some internal issues, there was some family dynamics. It was pulling teeth to get that messaging dialed in. So, I mean, it just didn't work, and related to that, right? What if your marketing does work, but then these people can't sell, right? Because you're not getting on the call and closing these deals, right? You're teeing it up and handing it over.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. And we do see that sometimes, where, we've definitely done our job and we've brought leads in, but the client either, they can't close it, or they don't have a system to nurture those relationships. They meet with them one time. If there's no immediate project, they forget about them. And, that's
Yeah.
not necessarily, how most, deals, especially at a larger high ticket amount, get done. So you do need to have those kind of fundamental things in place, which, are not necessarily in our wheelhouse of what we offer. But, to answer your question about can we see success with everybody? I mean, I think, there are certain triggers that we look for, and those are the types of companies that we, tend to see better results for. And, some of the things that I kind of have spoken about a little bit is, do you know who your ideal clients are in the first place? And do you have a story to tell, with them as well? We do sometimes come across companies that, they have a ton of experience in a certain category, but they can't get any more clients there. There's confidentiality or conflict agreements in place. So they need to branch off to a whole new category. So that's when they come to us. And, sometimes that's challenging because you don't have experience already in that particular new category you're trying to break into. So that could be challenging sometimes. So that is something that we'd like to look at. Like, do you have experience in that particular vertical or with that audience segment already? Are you solving a real problem that is urgent and important for companies to solve? Because if it's more of a nice to have, it's going to be a lot harder to cut through. We want to get a response when we send an email like, wow, this is exactly what I'm experiencing right now. This is what's keeping me up at night. Great timing. Let's get on a phone and talk. So we're looking for the ability to solve urgent and important, problems. And, also looking at things such as, can you give them some sort of offer? What is your lead magnet that's going to incentivize somebody to want to meet with you in the first place? Do you have some unique thinking, something unique and different? Because if it's the same, thing that everybody else is offering in the marketplace, the likelihood of you cutting through and them in a cold email saying, yeah, let's meet, is slim. We want, again, the response like, wow, yeah, that is my problem. And it sounds like you got an interesting way to solve it. Let's get on the phone. There's that curiosity, aspect that will get somebody on. So these are typically some of the things that we're trying to look for, but what's challenging is, if you're new to something like this, you may not have this in place already, which is understandable. So that's when we come in and from more of a strategic standpoint, working with our clients to try to help develop that, right? Help develop that ideal company profile, help develop, that unique, offer that you could put together. And, more times than not, I think we're able to help our clients break through and figure that out. But, I'd be lying to say if there's never been a situation where after we do, get together, for one reason or the other, we're just not able to, kind of put all that together, in a way that drives meaningful results.
Well, they don't have a CRM or a cadence. Can you send them to me?
We'll do it. We'll do it. Yeah,
I'll get them squared away, and then you can just dump a million leads to them and deals, and everybody will be happy.
absolutely.
So you're doing the cold outreach, and how do prospects respond? Is it, d- are you starting a dialogue? Are you engaging with them for a bit, then handing it over, or does the reply immediately go to the prospect? Like you get them to raise their hand, and then you're out of the way, and then are prospects like clicking to book a call, or they have, let's get on the phone and schedule something, and like walk me through that. How does that look?
Yeah, so there's really two ways. There is, yes, if we've got the right targeting, the right prospect, the right offer, timing is good. We're oftentimes getting pretty much immediate responses that let's meet, right? And then we'll start that sales conversation for our clients. And that said, research shows that there might be only 3% of the market in market for your services at any given time. So one of the really key things that we've unlocked over the last, couple of years is complementing your cold, outreach campaigns with what we call a thought leadership newsletter. So it is more of an email newsletter that gets blasted, to a database that you have. But this is not when you think of newsletter, you might be thinking, well, that's old school. Who does newsletters anymore? But there's been a tremendous resurgence of newsletters lately with things like maybe the Hustle or Morning Brew. These are companies that have been sold recently for millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases. So there's a sort of resurgence of the email newsletter. But when you think about companies and email newsletter, you think of it usually as something very boring, right? It's, hey, we just made this new hire, or we just won this project, or something along those lines, where it's all self-promotional about that. And us, that's not an email newsletter. That's something maybe internally that you want to share with your team to keep them abreast of what's happening in the organization. When we're talking about a newsletter, we're talking about a thought leadership newsletter, something that shares unique insights that is going to help your target audience do their job better. And that's what you want to put in their inbox, on a weekly basis. Because as I said, they're not always in market for your services. But if you can show up on a weekly or maybe even a bi-weekly basis with your newsletter and continue to provide value and insights, you're going to start to be seen as an authority in whatever arena that you're playing in. And this will help to build awareness of your firm. This will also help to warm up these prospects. So when you do start sending out your cold emails, and you're going to, as we said, your inbox is flooded with all of these. They're going to see your name, they're going to see your company, and it's not going to seem quite as cold because you've shown up for months, maybe even years, as part of an email newsletter for them. So we found that is a tremendous way. When there is awareness already, your cold email campaigns are going to perform much, much better. What's also great about these email newsletters is that it's a way to nurture those prospects. So as we said, you're going to meet with people. They're not going to be ready to buy right now. What are you going to do about that? Are you going to, check in? Hey, just checking in, see if you have a project. Are you going to do that?
Just want to bubble this up.
Bubble this up, right? Nobody wants that. You're going to become blind. Now, will they be more receptive to an email newsletter that consistently provides thought leadership and value to them? Absolutely. And then when that project does come up, they're going to remember you and they're going to contact you about that particular project. So that's something that we kind of stumbled into it, to be honest with you, discovering this. We discovered it really with ourselves first, and then we saw some clients that had an email newsletter, and they were seeing remarkably better results than clients of ours that did not have a newsletter. So that's when the light bulb went on, and we really realized that there's something happening here between having that email newsletter and complementing it with your kind of cold email and cold calling campaigns.
So are you signing them up, or just blasting a newsletter without them signing up for it?
It's both. It's both. Yeah, you certainly, the organic, people who opt into a list, those are great, right? Those they start usually very engaged. But when we're talking about especially enterprise level type sales, the odds of the CMO of Ford stumbling on your company's website and them deciding to register for your newsletter is slim.
Right.
So, just like you would build a list for a cold outreach campaign, you can build a list for your email newsletter, and you could put them on the newsletter and you can send them the emails. Now you might be thinking, well, are they going to complain? Are they going to, do spam complaints? And what we've found is the answer to that is yes, if you are sending a promotional email about the new hires and your new project and it's all about you. But if it's truly a very targeted newsletter that is relevant to them and provides value, we see very, very low complaints and high engagement. So it really depends on the content that you're putting together. If you have crappy content, you're gonna see a little bit of a backlash. If you have great content, you're gonna see this take off as a great new business asset.
Are you creating that content for your clients?
We do both, yeah. So for us, when we're kind of retained to come in, we will first and foremost figure out the strategy of the newsletter. So again, how is this going to, help your audience do its job better? Who is that audience that should belong on this newsletter? What type of content do they want to see? What are the competitors out there offering, and how can your newsletter be a little bit different? What type of design is going to be engaging to them? What type of metrics are we going to track to see if this is working or not working? So we start with all of that first. And then once we get the newsletter launched, the content itself could come in a couple of different forms. It could be original content that, again, is, as the name indicates, it's net new content that's created. That could come from our client. That could come from us. It could be curated content, meaning that it could be, looking at other industry resources and pulling together the top news stories that are relevant to this audience. That is a little bit of a lighter lift because you're not creating it, you're just kind of aggregating it. But we've seen some really great newsletters that they're not even creating that new content. They're just aggregating, but they've become now that resource for that target audience that they know. Rather than having to read 20 newsletters, I could just read this one and get everything that I need to know to do my job better. Or you can be repurposing content. Maybe you have podcasts or blogs or white papers, things like that you could take and you could recraft it and put it for your newsletter. So it can take a lot of different forms, and we work with clients in all the different capacities.
Are the ESPs, are they going to put the kibosh on this? Because the whole idea, getting multiple email addresses, warming them up, I mean, it's kind of gaming the system. I mean, obviously, Google knows what's happening. Are they just kind of turning a blind eye as long as complaints aren't high? And I mean, they know if an IP address, if a mailbox is warm or not. It's B2B. So, hey, let's have at it as long as you're not too spammy about it.
Sure. Yeah, so I think, there's kind of two ways to answer that. When we're talking about on the email newsletter side, adding emails to your list, there's nothing illegal about it. It's not against canned spam or any of those, types of things. There are certain email service providers that don't like you to use a purchased or rented list because that could, sometimes they've had experiences where there's abuse that happens from it. But if you find there are those that don't mind the purchased or rented list, there's nothing wrong with that. Now we're talking on the cold email side with what I think you're talking about with the warming of the emails and all of that. It's becoming more and more challenging. That's another area, where cold email and cold calling has become, more difficult in recent years. The volume of emails that you can send out from an email box is less and less because, if you get a spam complaint here or there, they start blacklisting, your email, which I think is another reason why we're more bullish on having this kind of newsletter approach, because something that you can do with the newsletter is you can look at the analytics of who is opening your newsletter, who is clicking on the links to the newsletter. So there could be a situation where you're not really even reaching out to prospects cold anymore. You're only reaching out to those that are engaging, let's say, with your newsletter. So in that case, you don't need to send out hundreds or thousands of emails. You're just taking your newsletter and reaching out to those that are engaged with your newsletter, because there's a reason why they're clicking on your thought leadership pages and they're opening your newsletter, so often. So number one, it's not going to seem cold. Number two, they're showing some level of intent that they're interested in, specific, types of content, specific potentially services that you're offering. So so that's another way that we're seeing more and more of that in the cold email world, not just with the newsletter, but looking again at who's visiting your website, and reaching out to those folks. There's technology now that can track not just the company, but even the individuals that are reaching your company. Who's engaging with you in social media. There's a lot of digital tools now that, I think the era of just cold email is starting to evolve, and you're going to be starting to reach out on a much smarter way to those that are somehow showing some sort of buying signals, with you already. And then I think you start to get that issue of what you said, the warming up and all of that isn't so much an issue anymore, because you're not trying to send, hundreds or thousands of emails. You're sending just a few very targeted ones, the people that are actually want to receive them.
So are you using the client's actual email then and sending out just on their behalf? Are you not creating cold lists and sending?
We are still doing all the above. Because the thing with the problem with the engaged type of prospects that I've talked about here is it requires you to have an email newsletter. It requires you to do marketing, so you're actually driving people to your website. It requires you to have a social media presence. And oftentimes a lot of our clients don't have that, or they're working towards that. So you still have to do the cold. Now, in a perfect world, you have this marketing and demand gen engine that's running, and then you really only needed to engage with those that are showing that intent. But in most cases, I think that's, that would be a much more mature sales organization. So we're trying to get there, and we're getting there with clients, but usually that's a little bit of a journey.
Yeah. Because it seems like maybe you could help them dust off old lists, people they haven't been in contact with. Because I see a lot of times, I mean, the emphasis is always on like net new. It's like, well, you probably got a database of people. If you would just say hello to them,
Yep.
you'd probably get something.
Yep.
They just let them go cold, and it's just crazy.
Yep. And that's actually something that we do. And to your point, like, this is probably the most successful thing that we do with clients or advise clients to do, is what we call warm prospecting. And what we mean by that is what the process that we take a client through is we ask them, you can download actually your LinkedIn contacts. There's a 1 or 2 clicks in your profile and you can download your contacts. And what we find is that people have done a pretty good job, most, connecting with colleagues, people they've met at conferences, college friends, all these different people. They've done a good job connecting with them, but they've done a poor job of staying in touch with them and nurturing them. People have moved on to new companies. People have been promoted. People that might have worked for you have gone to work at companies you might want to do business with. So you have this great network kind of just sitting there in LinkedIn that could be prospects, but you haven't really done anything with it. So one of the things that we do with clients is, like I mentioned, we ask them to download their LinkedIn contacts, and then we will filter those contacts to identify who are contacts that are either decision makers or influencers at companies that you could potentially do business with. So you might start off with, 1,000 or tens of thousands of contacts, but after you filter it down, you might be left only with a few hundred. But these are a few hundred that know, like, and trust you or your organization already. So you can then reach out to them with a more personalized message and do basically what you just said, and just kind of check in. If you do have something of value, like we talked about, workshops, trends reports, share that information with them. But in terms of a conversion rate, we see response rates exponentially higher because, again, they know, like, and trust someone, within your organization. And even the conversion rate from those meetings goes up for the same reason, because they don't need to spend that 6 months to get to know you. They already know you. But most companies we work with are sitting on this gold mine of contacts, within their organization. And we advise you get the whole organization involved, with this. Have everybody participate. You never know, even somebody junior in your company, may have gone to college with somebody and their dad is the CMO of some big company. You don't know what may be out there. So tap into, the collective, resources and networks of your organization. And in most cases, you're gonna be very surprised what you get back.
All right, I'm trying to pull this up right now. Where the heck is it? I'm on LinkedIn. I see my network, manage my network. I see connections. Oh, now contacts pop up. What the heck? I think it was lying to me. So I can download contacts, but not connections, right?
I'm not sure the difference, but yeah, you can
Yeah.
download one of the two. Yeah, in your settings.
Export. So when it lets me export, what is it giving me?
Yeah, so you're going to get back the name, the title, the company. You don't get their email addresses.
Okay.
So one of the things then you'll need to use a tool like an Apollo or something to enrich that information.
Gotcha.
We do get this question a lot. You could reach out to them on LinkedIn, and there might be something you might want to try. But what we've found is that most, especially when we're talking the bigger organizations, people have LinkedIn profiles, but they don't really use it as a communication channel, and it's harder to reach them. But you might want to start there, and if you don't get a response, then go and try to find their email address.
Yeah. All right. So I'm not crazy. I clicked it, got the contacts. I went back, and sure enough, it's connections, following, and followers. Contacts are not there. So if y'all don't see it, if you're listening to this, you're not crazy if you don't see it. Like refresh the page because I go back. Nope, it's not there again. Manage my network. I have connections, then following and followers groups. I think when Microsoft bought LinkedIn, maybe they didn't improve it. What do you think?
There's definitely some suspect decisions that have been made on that end. I mean, I love LinkedIn. It's such a valuable tool.
I've been on it since like 2004, so
it could also be so much better as well.
Yes. Oh man. All right. So who should be reaching out to you? That you'd mentioned agencies, smaller companies in the SMB space. Like who should be reaching out?
Yeah, we work with a lot with, like I said, agencies, consultancies, professional services firms, but really anybody that's selling B2B services. Generally, these services are higher ticket items. We're talking $25,000 or more type of services or products. And that's really, I think, where you start to see a good ROI from a program, like ours. But, we do everything from the services, like I mentioned, it's a done for you type model. But then we also work with clients to more on a consulting basis to help them get the right people, process, and technology in place so they can really run this internally for themselves. So happy to chat with anybody, whether you're just thinking about a program like this or you're ready to, implement, we work and be a resource to anyone.
Very cool. Yes, I've got your website linking out to it, and it's your name, right? Christian Banach, BANACH.com, correct?
That's right. Yep. And we have our email newsletter. We like to drink our own Kool-Aid. So if you go to the website and want to see an example of what we're talking about, sign up and you'll see exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. Very cool. All right, man. Well, is it hot? Is it hot in Chicago? Because it's hot here.
It started to cool off a little bit here. It's in the summer. So we're seeing some low 80s, high 70s, which is actually a nice relief.
Are you a Bears fan?
I am. And so we'll see what happens this year. It's a lot more to be hopeful of this year than prior years.
You got that USC quarterback, man. Good luck to you on that. I'm not a fan.
Fair enough.
I got a group of college buddies. We all talk smack, and one's from Chicago and one's from Wisconsin. So most of the time we just sit back and listen to them shred each other. But depending on our mood, we'll back one or the other and just pile on. And so it's fun times. All right, Christian. Well, welcome back to the Sales Podcast, man. Thanks for coming back, and been great having you on. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you, Wes.
Hey, go sell something.